Okay, everyone, this screencast, as it suggests, is going to focus on feedback and self-assessment. I'm going to talk a little bit about feedback, and then you'll take a break and watch a short video narrated by Daniel Pink about motivation, and then have to listen to me again talk about how do we teach students self-assessment skills. Anyway, so the emphasis on feedback is critical to effective instruction. John Hattie is an educational researcher who took a tremendous amount of time to read across, as you see here, thousands of educational research studies, all in an effort to figure out what strategies, techniques, things teachers use can have the most positive impact on kids' learning. And what he found was that it's feedback. Feedback has one of the highest effects, but we have to make sure we're using feedback in such a way so that it'll be effective and that students will respond positively to it. Because even though it may seem a little crazy to wrap our brains around, when we get, as Dylan Williams says here, more than likely, anytime we give feedback, students will move in a negative direction rather than a positive direction. So let's look a little closer at what he means here. So if you look at this chart, as you can see, there's four pretty much. Think about your own experience when somebody gives you some feedback on something. You can totally reject what they're saying. Oops, I'm sorry. And just not listen to them, ignore the feedback, so you're not, changing anything. And if you look across the chart, you can see that really only in two instances will students move in a positive direction, either changing their behavior through increased effort because of the feedback we shared with them, or modifying their goal, right, and have increased desire, goal, aspiration to achieve whatever that goal was to begin with. So in order for us to try to avoid the negative repercussions of feedback that tend to happen more frequently than the positive, we need to think about the ways in which we can make the feedback we provide our students more effective and meaningful. So one way to start thinking about that is to ask ourselves, how can thinking about like a video game help us understand ways to give feedback in such a way that students are more motivated and likely to use it? We got this quote here from James Gee. And take a second and read that. So if you think about it, a video game, while you're playing it, as he suggests here, you're constantly getting feedback on your performance. However, kids, when they find out that they've made a mistake or their character dies or whatever it is when they're playing, they tend not to be like, well, I'm not doing that anymore. They keep going. They take the information that they learned and they use it, and they use it right away. So there's some features of video games that can help us think about what are the features of effective feedback. So here we go. There's for effective feedback, you need to have a clear, specific goal, right? And if you think about the video game, obviously it's getting to the next level or killing all the whatevers, or I don't know, eating all the ghosts if you're in Pac-Man, I guess, who knows. But also the feedback needs to be something that's very tangible and actionable, that, okay, you've given me a suggestion and I can do it, here I go. It needs not to be written in like a jargon so that the user of the feedback, the student in this case, wouldn't know what they're supposed to do or how you're suggesting they can change in order to achieve their goal. They got to get it right away. It has to be kind of ongoing, and you need to be consistent in the message that you're sending with your feedback. Like, let's not change what we're suggesting for students to do. So these are some of the essentials of effective feedback, and you'll read more about these in Grant Wiegand's article. What I want to ask you to do is what you're going to do is practice using the three-pronged approach to giving feedback. And I think we went over this in the fall, but just to remind you, it's telling your students always what they've done well, an area that they could improve, and then giving them some concrete suggestions. Again, that tangible, actionable component of the feedback. I know what you're probably thinking, that you don't have time to do this consistently. How in the world can you stay up every day, all night, writing feedback on 150 or 140 students' papers? So Fisher and Frey, some of the educational researchers you've already read some stuff from, suggest that one way that teachers need to think about approaching this is that we need to start distinguishing between mistakes and errors when we're giving feedback to our students. So think about your own content area, and think about, I'm sure it'll be easy for you to come up with an example of something that's an error rather than a mistake. So in social studies, of course, I know, a mistake might be writing the wrong date down for something, but an error might be linking the wrong cause to a particular historical event, because that indicates that your thinking of understanding of the whole time period is wrong. Flipping around a date, that's easy enough to fix. So there's thinking about the types of errors that we attend to, and instead of providing feedback on every single mistake a student makes, we focus our feedback on helping them recognize their misconceptions or ways in which the procedure that they attempted to follow, whether that's in math or science, language arts, was incorrect. So if we look at an example, of course, from social studies, these are like typical errors that students make when they are reading and analyzing primary sources. So did they not check who the author was? Did the contextualization? You get the idea. And then you can very easily note which areas students are having weaknesses in as you check for patterns across. So when we're thinking about giving feedback, I want to focus on giving feedback to my students on a major skill, concept, process that they would need across the entire semester or the entire course, and not necessarily the small mistakes they might make around the details within a particular lesson or a unit. That diminishes the amount of feedback that you have to provide, and it also tells the kids, like, this is the most important learning goal. This is our target. We want to be able to read and analyze primary sources. So all throughout this year, I'm going to be giving you feedback as you make progress toward that goal. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to take 5 of those work samples that you used a little earlier, right, to create those data charts, and use that 3-pronged approach to write feedback on them. Then you're going to scan them and upload them into Folio. When you're done doing that across the 5, you're going to read across those your feedback and note if there were errors in common across the 5 students selected. So just select randomly. And then if you see a pattern and want to talk about why do you think that area is particularly challenging for students. And then the next thing, like it suggests here, what are you going to do in the future so they can use that feedback in order to grow in the area where they're struggling. You are going to submit this practice feedback task in Folio with your Wiggins reading response. Everything in the same Dropbox. Okay? Not 2 Dropboxes. All right. Let's take a little break. And you're going to watch the short video narrated by Daniel Pink. Then I'll be back.